Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the ultimate deep dive where history, emotion, and the untold secrets of the music industry collide. We are taking you straight into the aftermath of the colossal, earth-shaking 2026 BTS Reunion World Tour, a spectacle that didn't just sell out stadiums but redefined the very essence of a global comeback. The lights have dimmed, the confetti has been swept away, and the Forever Young era has solidified its place in the Hall of Fame, yet a massive question mark remains hovering over the HYBE headquarters. In a shockingly candid, exclusive interview that has sent shockwaves through the fandom and the industry alike, the mastermind himself, Bang Si-hyuk, finally broke his silence. He didn't just talk about the revenue or the records, he opened the vault on the blood, sweat, and tears that nearly tore the production apart. He revealed, for the first time ever, the ranking of the members who were the most difficult to manage during this monumental tour. But hold on, don't let your imagination run wild with rumors of diva behavior or tantrums, because the reality is far more complex, far more human, and infinitely more heartbreaking. We are talking about perfectionism that borders on obsession, physical limits pushed to the breaking point, and the crushing weight of a decade-long legacy that rested on 7 pairs of shoulders. Who was the member that made the stage directors weep in frustration? Who was the one that Bang PD himself had to beg to slow down? Was it the relentless leader carrying the world, or the golden prodigy refusing to accept anything less than god-tier performance? Why did one member's specific request almost cancel the sole finale? And which member's emotional state became the delicate thread holding the entire tour together? Prepare your hearts and open your minds, because we are about to peel back the curtain on the true cost of greatness. This is not just a list, this is the anatomy of legends. Are you ready to face the truth behind the magic? Let's find out. Number 7. The Unpredictable Maverick. The Guardian of Unfiltered Joy. To kick off this legendary countdown, we turn our gaze to the man often cited as the pillar of stability, yet Bang Si-hyuk revealed a shocking twist that places him as the 7th most difficult member to manage a ranking that might surprise you. But for the production team, it was a daily battle of wills. We are talking about the eldest, the worldwide handsome, Kim Seokjin. You might think, wait, isn't Jin the easygoing funny one? And that is exactly where the deception lies. According to the exclusive insights from the 2026 World Tour files, Jin's difficulty didn't stem from ego or arrogance. It stemmed from an unyielding, stubborn refusal to let the tour become a robotic, corporate machine. Picture the scene. It's early 2026. The strategy meeting for the Forever Young Massive Stadium Tour is underway in the sleek, glass-walled conference rooms of HYBE. The directors want a high-tech, perfectly synchronized show with heavy backing tracks to preserve the members' voices during a grueling 50-city run. Who is the first to slam his hand on the table? It was Jin. Bang PD confessed that Seokjin waged a quiet war against the perfection of technology. He insisted, with a terrifying seriousness that contrasts his bubbly persona, that his microphone feed be cranked up higher than the backing track, exposing every breath, every flaw, and every raw emotion. For the sound engineers, this was a nightmare. They were terrified of the criticism if a note was missed, but Jin was relentless, arguing that ARMY waited 3 years for us, not for a recording. This stubbornness peaked during the North American leg, specifically the historic 3-night run at MetLife Stadium. The weather was atrocious, pouring rain, slippery stages, a technical hazard. The safety protocols, Section 4, Paragraph B of the tour manual, strictly stated that in such conditions, the intricate moving platforms for his solo song, Running Wild, should be grounded, and the artist should remain on the main stage. Did Jin listen? Absolutely not! Bang Si-hyuk recalls watching from the control booth, his heart in his throat, as Jin not only walked out onto the extended stage in the torrential downpour but sprinted. He turned the Running Wild performance into a literal manifestation of the song, slipping and sliding, laughing maniacally with the crowd, completely disregarding the millions of dollars of safety insurance protocols. The production team was screaming into their headsets, "Get him back, he's going to fall!" But Jin was in his element, soaked to the bone, creating a core memory for 80,000 fans while giving the safety director a near heart attack. This is the difficulty of Kim Seokjin. He is uncontrollable when it comes to fan interaction. But there is a deeper layer to this ranking. We have to talk about the Super Tuna incident of the 2026 Tokyo Dome show. The setlist was crafted to be a tear-jerking narrative of their journey, a serious artistic statement. Jin, however, felt the energy was too heavy. Without consulting the showrunner or Bang PD, he secretly coordinated with the bandmaster, bribing them, rumor has it, with expensive wine to switch the encore opener. Instead of the planned ballad Epiphany, 2026 acoustic ver, the stadium speakers blasted the chaotic beats of Super Tuna. Bang PD described this moment as pure panic turned into pure magic. The lighting team scrambled, the dancers were confused, but the crowd went nuclear. Jin had effectively hijacked the multi-million-dollar production because he felt the fans needed to laugh. Afterward, backstage, while the staff was tearing their hair out about the ruined cue sheets, Jin simply smiled and said, "But look at how happy they were. How do you manage an artist who prioritizes happiness over the script? You can't. You just survive him. Furthermore, we must address the physical toll." By 2026, Jin is in his mid-30 seconds. The choreography for the reunion tour was designed to be nostalgic but intense. Bang PD revealed that Jin was secretly dealing with a recurring knee issue from his military days, something he hid from the members to not worry them. The difficulty for the management was forcing him to rest. He would sneak into the practice room at 2 a.m., long after the schedule ended, perfecting the Run BTS footwork until he collapsed. The medical team had to practically beg Bang PD to intervene. There is a specific email thread leaked from the tour management titled, Subject, Restraining Seokjin, detailing efforts to lock the practice room doors just to make him sleep. He wasn't difficult because he was lazy. He was difficult because he didn't know how to stop. He carried the burden of being the Taehyung, oldest brother, so heavily that he felt he couldn't afford a single slip-up. He wanted to prove that time hadn't rusted his skills. This perfectionism, wrapped in a layer of dad jokes and flying kisses, made him a wild card. He would change his ending mentions every night, dragging them out to 15 minutes, destroying the strict curfew schedules of venues in London and Paris, resulting in thousands of dollars in fines for overtime. When Bang PD confronted him about the fines, Jin reportedly pulled out his own black card and said, "I'll pay for the time with Army." That shut everyone up. He was unmanageable because he operated on heart, not logic. He was the wild card that kept the tour human, even if he aged the production manager by 10 years. So, at number 7, we have the man whose difficulty was his unstoppable love for the fans and his refusal to be anything less than authentic, the silver-voiced rulebreaker, Kim Seokjin. Number 6. The tyrant of rhythm, the nightmare of perfection. If the 7th spot was about an uncontrollable spirit of fun, the 6th spot takes a sharp, terrifying turn into the realm of absolute, military-grade discipline. We are moving from the chaotic joy of Jin to the surgical precision of the man who, according to Bang Si-hyuk, instills more fear in the production crew than the CEO himself. Sitting at number 6 is the dance leader, the sunshine who casts the longest shadow of expectation. J-Hope. Jung Ho-seok. Now, you might be scratching your head. J-Hope, the beacon of positivity? The man whose smile could power a small city? Yes, that J-Hope. But Bang PD dropped a bombshell revelation regarding the 2026 World Tour. Managing J-Hope was like trying to manage a force of nature that refuses to accept the laws of physics or human fatigue. The difficulty here wasn't rebellion, it was an obsession with perfection that bordered on the terrifying. Let's set the scene. It's the final rehearsal week at the enormous Goyang Stadium before the tour kicks off. The crew has been working for 18 hours. Everyone is exhausted. The director yells, "Cut!" and is about to dismiss the dancers. Suddenly, a voice cuts through the silence like a razor blade. Hold on. The formation on OWN is off by 3 centimeters. It's HYBE. While everyone else saw a spectacular performance, J-Hope's hawk eyes saw a microscopic error in alignment. Bang Si-hyuk confessed that J-Hope's difficulty lay in his inability to compromise. In a post-military world, J-Hope's already legendary work ethic had mutated into something even more formidable. He wasn't just an artist, he was a co-director who questioned everything. There is a now infamous story from the Chicago stop of the tour regarding the lighting design for his solo stage, More. The lighting director, an industry veteran with 20 years of experience, had programmed a complex sequence of strobe lights. During the technical run-through, J-Hope stopped the music. He walked to the edge of the stage, looked up at the control booth, and calmly explained that the lights were hitting the snare drum beat 0.04 seconds too late. The crew thought he was joking. Human eyes shouldn't be able to perceive that lag. But J-Hope insisted. They checked the timecode logs, and guess what? He was right. The entire lighting rig had to be recalibrated 3 hours before the gates opened. The crew was sweating bullets, stress levels were through the roof, and the management was frantic about the timeline. Bang PD noted that J-Hope's standards were so high that the staff felt like they were walking on eggshells, terrified that teacher Hoseok would spot a flaw they missed. He made the professionals feel like amateurs, and that friction created a tense, albeit high-quality, working environment. But the difficulty goes deeper into the physical realm. By 2026, the choreography for BTS hits had evolved. It was harder, faster, and more demanding. J-Hope, however, refused to let the members or the dancers dance with low energy during rehearsals. He treated every soundcheck like the Super Bowl. There was a specific incident in London at Wembley Stadium where the stage floor was deemed slightly too slippery by the safety team due to humidity. The logical management decision was to cut the breakdance break in Hope World. J-Hope refused. He spent 2 hours with the stagehands, on his hands and knees, scrubbing the floor himself with towels and resin to ensure the grip was perfect so the show could go on as planned. He didn't demand others do it, he did it himself, which made the staff feel incredibly guilty and compelled to work harder. It's a psychological difficulty he leads by such an intense example that you cannot slack off in his presence. Furthermore, Bang Si-hyuk revealed a heartbreaking detail about J-Hope's condition during the Asian leg of the tour. J-Hope had developed shin splints, a painful condition common in runners and dancers. The pain must have been excruciating. The medical team advised him to wear cushioned sneakers instead of the styled combat boots for the opening segment. J-Hope refused. He argued that the silhouette of the boots was essential for the visual aesthetic of the Black Swan transition. He prioritized the art over his own skeleton. Bang PD recalls having a shouting match with J-Hope in the dressing room, one of the few times voices were raised begging him to think about his longevity. J-Hope simply replied, "I have to give them the version of J-Hope they remember." He performed in the boots. Afterward, he had to be carried to the car. This level of self-sacrificial stubbornness made him a nightmare for the wellness team. They couldn't protect him from himself. He was difficult because he viewed his body as a tool for the audience's pleasure, a tool to be used until it broke if necessary. And let's not forget the playlist curation battles. J-Hope, with his deep knowledge of flow and hype, constantly rearranged the setlist. In Los Angeles, he felt the transition from the vocal lines ballad to the rap lines cipher was energy suicide. He demanded a new remix, a new transition video, and a new lighting cue 24 hours before the show. The music directors were pulling their hair out, uploading large files over hotel Wi-Fi, screaming that it was impossible, but J-Hope sat with them, editing the audio tracks himself on his laptop until sunrise. The result? The crowd went absolutely feral. It was the highlight of the night. Bang Si-hyuk admits that while J-Hope was a thorn in the side of the logistics team, he was the savior of the show's quality. He was the guardian of the BTS standard, the one who ensured that world class wasn't just a marketing slogan, but a tangible reality every single night. He was difficult because he cared too much, loved too hard, and refused to let the legacy fade even by a single lumen of spotlight. He exhausted everyone around him, but he exhausted himself the most. And that is why, with a mix of awe and exhaustion, J-Hope claims the number 6 spot. Number 5. The Philosopher King, the prisoner of the crown's weight. We have arrived at the midpoint of this emotional roller coaster, and if you thought the list would only consist of the wild cards, think again. Number 5 belongs to the pillar, the foundation, the man who has held the group together through storms that would have shattered lesser men. Yes, we are talking about the leader, RM, Kim Namjoon. Now, I can hear the collective gasp of the army. Namjoon? The most responsible man on the planet? How could he be difficult? This is where Bang Si-hyuk's revelation hits the hardest, piercing through the veil of the perfect leader image to reveal a struggle so human, so raw, that it might bring you to tears. According to the tour documents, RM's difficulty was not about behavior, it was about burden. Bang PD described managing RM during the 2026 World Tour as trying to negotiate with a philosopher who is carrying the weight of the entire world on a fractured spine. The core of the conflict lay in the very identity of the tour. While HYBE and the investors wanted a glittering commercial greatest hits celebration, a party to end all parties, RM stood as a solitary, immovable wall against it. He didn't want a nostalgia trip. He wanted a statement. He wanted the tour to reflect their age, their pain, their growth, and the complex reality of returning after the military. This philosophical clash turned the pre-production phase into a battlefield. There were late-night meetings in the HYBE executive suite where RM, with dark circles under his eyes, would tear apart proposed set lists, arguing that Dynamite following Spring Day was an emotional betrayal. He fought for the inclusion of obscure, melancholic tracks, songs that explored the fear of aging and irrelevance. The marketing team was pulling their hair out, shouting about festival vibes, but RM was relentless. "If we don't tell the truth," he famously said in a heated email to the board, "then this reunion is just a cash grab." This integrity, while noble, made him incredibly difficult for a company trying to guarantee a blockbuster product. But the true nightmare for the production staff, specifically the PR and translation teams, was the ending mentions. In the world of K-pop touring, ending speeches are often scripted or at least outlined to ensure safety and ease of translation. He threw the scripts in the trash. Every single night. Bang Si-hyuk revealed that RM's refusal to stick to the teleprompter caused sheer panic in the control booth. He would stand there, under the spotlight, sweating and breathless, and pour out his soul in complex, poetic Korean metaphors that were impossible to translate in real time. There is a legendary story from the Berlin show. The teleprompter read a generic, "Thank you, Germany, we missed you." Instead, RM launched into a 5-minute impromptu monologue about the concept of Fernweh, farsickness, the Berlin Wall, and the psychological barriers of returning to the stage as a 30-something-year-old man. The simultaneous interpreters in the booth were reportedly hyperventilating, unable to convey the nuance of his philosophy to the non-Korean speakers fast enough. The subtitle screens glitched. The PR team was terrified he would say something politically sensitive, but the crowd? They were crying. They hung on to his every word. Bang PD admitted he aged 5 years every time RM grabbed the mic, never knowing if he was going to get a pop star soundbite or a dissertation on existentialism. The difficulty was the unpredictability of his intellect. Furthermore, we have to talk about the sustainability war of 2026. RM, heavily influenced by his personal growth and art patronage, demanded that the tour be the most eco-friendly in history. This sounds great on paper, right? In reality, it was a logistical nightmare that nearly delayed the tour launch by 2 months. He demanded no single-use plastics backstage for a crew of 500 people. He insisted on merchandise made from specific upcycled materials that were stuck in supply chain hell. He personally audited the carbon footprint reports. The logistics directors were furious, budgets were blown, and vendors were fired. Bang PD recalls finding RM in the hallway, arguing with a vendor about the fabric density of a tote bag, eyes red from exhaustion. He wouldn't let it go. He was difficult because he refused to let his morals be compromised by convenience. But the most heartbreaking aspect of his ranking comes from the emotional toll he absorbed. As the leader, he became the emotional trash can for the tour. When the other members were stressed, injured, or fighting, and yes, they fought families do, they went to Namjoon. He absorbed their anxieties, their fears, and their complaints. Bang Si-hyuk confessed that there were days when RM would lock himself in his hotel room, refusing to come out until soundcheck, simply because his social battery was incinerated. He was managing the members, managing the company, and managing the expectations of millions, leaving nothing for himself. There was a terrifying moment in Brazil, right before the show at Allianz Park. RM was missing. Security found him on the roof of the hotel, just staring at the city. He wasn't suicidal, but he was hollow. He told Bang PD, "I don't know if I'm Kim Namjoon or RM anymore." The production almost halted. The difficulty was keeping the leader from crumbling under the weight of the crown he never asked to wear forever. He required constant emotional maintenance, late-night talks, and reassurance that he wasn't failing. He was the hardest to manage because he was the most fragile, hiding his cracks behind a facade of strength. He forced the company to treat them as humans, not products. And that battle, while necessary, was the most exhausting war of the entire tour. He was the conscience of BTS, and a conscience is a heavy thing to carry. Thus, the man who carried the world, Kim Namjoon, takes the number 5 spot. Number 4. The Angel of Agony, the architect of impossible standards. As we ascend higher into this hierarchy of hardship, the atmosphere shifts from the mental burdens of leadership to a visceral, physical battleground where beauty is bought with blood. Number 4 is occupied by the member who Bang Si-hyuk describes as a beautiful tragedy waiting to happen, the man who weaponized his own perfectionism until it became a liability for the entire tour's insurance policy. We are speaking of the one, the only, Park Jimin. Now, hold your breath. Jimin is known as the angel of the group, the sweetheart who comforts everyone. How could he be a nightmare to manage? The answer lies in the terrifying gap between his human limitations and his artistic vision. Bang PD revealed that managing Jimin during the 2026 World Tour was like trying to restrain a moth that is desperately in love with the flame. The difficulty was not attitude, it was his terrifying lack of self-preservation. In 2026, Jimin's artistic identity had evolved into something dark, ethereal, and physically punishing. He didn't just want to dance, he wanted to float, to break gravity. The conflict began in the rehearsal studios in Seoul. The choreographers had designed a modified routine for Black Swan and Lie, taking into account that Jimin was now in his 30 seconds and had a history of neck and back issues. They removed the aerial stunts. Jimin, upon seeing the safe choreography, reportedly went silent, a silence that the staff learned to fear more than shouting. He didn't argue. He simply stayed behind after everyone left, unlocked the rig, and taught himself the aerial routine he wanted, alone, at 3 a.m. When the directors found him the next morning, bruised but perfect, they had no choice but to include it. He held the production hostage with his own body. If they didn't let him do it safely, he would do it dangerously. Bang Si-hyuk confessed that he lost sleep every night of the tour, terrified that he would get a call saying Jimin had fallen. This fear climaxed during the European leg in Paris, at the Stade de France. It was the fashion capital, and Jimin was obsessed with the visual aesthetic. He demanded a specific costume for his solo stage, a custom-made, heavy, jeweled corset structure that weighed nearly 15 pounds. The wardrobe team begged him not to wear it. They warned him that it would restrict his diaphragm, making it impossible to hit the high notes in Who and that the weight would throw off his center of gravity during the spins. Jimin's response? If I faint, drag me off. But I am wearing it. The night of the concert, the crew watched in horror on the monitors. You could see Jimin gasping for air between lines, his ribs likely bruised by the metal boning of the outfit. His face was pale, sweat pouring down not from heat, but from pain. Yet, the moment the spotlight hit him, he smiled that angelic, dangerous smile and performed with a fluidity that defied logic. He didn't miss a note. Backstage, the moment the lights went down, he collapsed. The oxygen tanks were brought out. The difficulty for the management was that they couldn't stop him. He possessed a soft power, a manipulative fragility that made everyone want to protect him. Even as he marched willingly into the fire, he seduced the staff into enabling his perfectionism. The makeup artists, the stylists, the camera operators, they all became accomplices to his dangerous standards because they were mesmerized by his results. Furthermore, we must discuss the monitor mix saga. Jimin has always been critical of his own vocals, but in 2026, this morphed into an obsession. He would spend hours after the show, not celebrating, but sitting in a dark room with the audio engineers, replaying the concert recording frame by frame. He would point out cracks that no machine could detect. He demanded that the sound system be re-equalized for every single venue, disregarding the acoustic limitations of the stadiums. In New York at Citi Field, he threatened to perform without an in-ear monitor because he felt the mix was lying to him. Do you know how dangerous that is? To perform in a stadium with a 3-second sound delay without in-ears? The audio director threatened to quit. Bang PD had to fly in personally to mediate, eventually compromising by hiring a separate, dedicated sound engineer just for Jimin's left ear. The costs were astronomical, but the most difficult aspect was his diet and discipline. The catering staff was constantly stressed. Jimin, in his pursuit of the ethereal look, would often refuse to eat properly before shows. surviving on energy gels and water to avoid looking bloated on the 8K screens. The medical team was in a constant state of high alert for hypoglycemia. They had to sneak protein powder into his drinks like he was a stubborn child. Bang Si-hyuk recalled a meeting where he slammed his fist on the desk shouting, "Jimin, you need to eat to live." To which Jimin softly replied, "I need to be perfect to live." How do you argue with that? He wasn't being a diva. He was being a martyr for his art. He truly believed that if he gave anything less than 110%, the fans would leave. This deep-seated insecurity, masked by world-class charisma, made him the most emotionally exhausting member to care for. The staff walked on eggshells, not because they were scared of his anger, but because they were scared of his disappointment in himself. He carried a whip, but he only used it on his own back. And watching someone you love destroy themselves for perfection? That is the hardest job in the world. Thus, the beautiful, terrifying perfectionist Park Jimin claims the number 4 spot. Number 3. The enigmatic virtuoso, the rebel who defied the script. We have entered the top 3, the danger zone where the difficulty shifts from physical or emotional burdens to something far more volatile, pure, unadulterated unpredictability. If managing the others was like herding cats, managing the member at number 3 was, according to Bang Si-hyuk, like trying to predict the weather on a different planet. We are talking about the man who operates on his own time zone, the visual god, Kim Taehyung, also known as V. Why is he so high on this list? Why is the charming, deep-voiced baritone a source of such stress for the HYBE executives? The answer lies in his complete and utter refusal to be a product. By 2026, V had transcended the role of an idol and viewed himself strictly as an artist, and artists, as Bang PD learned the hard way, do not follow schedules. The difficulty began before the tour even started, during the concept meetings. While the creative directors pitched neon lights, fireworks, and high-energy pop aesthetics for the stadium shows, V sat in silence, scrolling through his phone. When asked for his opinion, he reportedly stood up, walked to the whiteboard, erased the entire plan, and wrote a single word, classic. He didn't want a K-pop concert. He wanted a vintage jazz cabaret on a stadium scale. He fought tooth and nail to slow down the tempo of the show. He held the setlist hostage, refusing to perform the upbeat, bubblegum pop version of Boy With Love unless he was allowed a 10-minute solo jazz improvisation segment with a saxophone he had only started learning 2 months prior. The musical director was on the verge of quitting. You can't do free-form jazz in a stadium of 60,000 people, they argued. V simply stared at them with that intense, unreadable gaze and said, "Watch me." And he did. But the stress leading up to it shaved years off the staff's lives. But the true nightmare for the tour management was V's legendary mood factor. Bang Si-hyuk revealed that V's performance wasn't dictated by the choreography or the script, but by his vibe in the moment. If V felt the energy was fake or rushed, he would simply stop. There is a terrifying report from the Sao Paulo show. The intro music for Singularity was playing, the lift was rising, but V wasn't on it. Panic erupted in the comms. Where is V? Where is Taehyung? Was he hurt? Was he sick? No. He was found standing by the side of the stage, watching a moth flutter around a spotlight. He told the frantic stage manager, "Wait. It's beautiful." He held up a multi-million-dollar global broadcast for 45 seconds to admire an insect. The director was screaming, the satellite feed was burning money, but V walked onto the stage only when he was ready, delivering a performance so hauntingly beautiful that everyone instantly forgave him. This emotional volatility made him impossible to cue. You couldn't script him. The camera operators were constantly zoomed in, sweating because V rarely followed the blocking. He would wander off into the crowd, jump into sections he wasn't supposed to, or lie down on the stage floor if he felt tired, forcing the cameramen to run handheld to catch him. He turned a choreographed blockbuster into an indie film, and while the critics loved it, the logistics team was in hell. Then came the Paris escape of 2026. This is perhaps the most famous incident of the tour. On the day of the sold-out show at the Stade de France, V vanished from the hotel. No security detail, no manager. He had slipped out through a kitchen exit wearing a disguise. For 4 hours, the biggest pop star in the world was missing in Paris. The head of HYBE security was preparing a resignation letter. The French police were quietly alerted. Where was he? He was later found by a fan, sitting in a small, obscure cafe in Montmartre, sketching people in a notebook, sipping an espresso, completely unbothered. When the team finally retrieved him, rushing him to the venue with a police escort, V was calm. He told a furious Bang PD, "I needed to feel the city to sing for it." He didn't understand the panic, he only understood his need for inspiration. How do you punish someone who does it for the art? You can't. Furthermore, V was the costume terrorist. The wardrobe department spent months creating bespoke outfits costing hundreds of thousands of dollars. V, however, hated being uncomfortable. There were nights, like in London, where he would take a pair of scissors to a $10,000 Saint Laurent jacket 5 minutes before stage time because the collar is too stiff. He would walk out wearing a cut-up, frayed masterpiece of his own making, leaving the stylists weeping in the dressing room. He refused to wear makeup on days he felt his skin needed to breathe, appearing on 4K giant screens barefaced, defying the industry standard of perfection. He challenged every rule of the Idol handbook. Bang Si-hyuk summed it up best. Taehyung is not an employee. He is a weather event. You don't manage him. You just bring an umbrella and hope for the best. His difficulty lay in his untamable free spirit. He prioritized his own happiness and artistic integrity above the corporate machine, forcing the entire massive tour infrastructure to bend to his whim. He was the chaotic genius who kept everyone on their toes, terrifyingly unpredictable, yet undeniably essential. Without his chaos, the tour would have had no soul, but for the people responsible for the timeline, he was number 3. Number 2. The savage architect, the silent king who overruled the CEO. We are now at the penultimate spot, the silver medal of stress, and the atmosphere in the room changes instantly. If the previous members were difficult due to chaos, emotion, or physical recklessness, number 2 is difficult for a completely different, spine-chilling reason: absolute, terrifying authority. We are talking about the man who doesn't just perform the music, but dissects it, rebuilds it, and holds it to a standard that makes even seasoned professionals tremble. He is the hand of Midas, the Minstradamus, the one and only Min Yoongi, aka Suga. You might assume that Suga, with his calm demeanor and desire to be a rock, would be the easiest to manage. Bang Si-hyuk's revelation shattered that illusion into a million pieces. He described managing Suga during the 2026 World Tour as trying to negotiate with a CEO who has more power than you do. The difficulty of Min Yoongi was that he effectively hijacked the artistic direction of the entire tour. It started months before the first ticket was sold. The agency had hired a Grammy-winning musical director to arrange the live band versions of the songs. They presented the score to the members. Everyone nodded, except Yoongi. He reportedly took the score, flipped through it in silence for 10 agonizing minutes, and then dropped it on the table. "It has no soul," he said. He didn't just critique it, he fired the arrangement. For the next 3 weeks, Suga disappeared into his genius lab, emerging with completely new, darker, rock-heavy arrangements for Fake Love and Dionysus that required an entirely new band setup. The logistics team had to scramble to hire 3 extra percussionists and a specific type of distortion pedal that was only available in Germany, all because Suga refused to perform the watered-down pop versions. He held the setlist hostage until the sound matched the fury in his head. Bang PD confessed that there were moments he felt like he was working for Suga, not the other way around. But the true nightmare for the tour management was the hotel studio clause. Suga is a workaholic to a pathological degree. He stipulated that a fully functional recording studio had to be set up in his hotel suite in every single city. We are not talking about a laptop and headphones. We are talking about reference monitors, soundproofing foam, and condenser microphones. Do you know how hard it is to soundproof a penthouse in the Ritz-Carlton at 2 a.m.? The tour managers were constantly fielding noise complaints from VIP guests in London and Tokyo because Suga was blasting beats at maximum volume, working on a new mixtape in the middle of a world tour. When the hotel management threatened to kick them out, Suga simply told the staff, "Buy the floor." The financial team was weeping, but they did it. He was difficult because he prioritized his creation over sleep, over rules, and over the sanity of the accommodation team. Then, there is the heartbreaking, physical aspect of his ranking. We all know about his shoulder surgery in 2020. By 2026, the grueling choreography of a 3-hour show was taking a toll. Bang Si-hyuk revealed a secret that the cameras never caught. Yoongi was in constant, silent pain. During the North American leg, after the intense HYBE performance involving aggressive movements, his shoulder flared up badly. The medical team advised unequivocally that he needed to sit out the choreography for Run BTS and perform seated. Any other artist would have agreed. Suga? He looked the doctor in the eye and said, "If I die on stage, I die on stage." He refused to modify a single step. The management was terrified of a lawsuit, of a permanent injury, of the guilt. They had to station a physical therapist at the very edge of the stage, hidden in the shadows, ready to rush in if his arm gave out. Managing a man who values his pride and his promise to the fans over his own skeletal integrity is a harrowing experience. Every time he lifted his arm for the ending pose, the entire backstage crew held their breath. Furthermore, let's talk about the Dachwita sword incident. For his solo stage, Suga wanted authenticity. He wanted to use a traditional Korean sword, a geom. The safety regulations in venues like SoFi Stadium strict forbid metal weaponry. The prop team created a realistic resin replica. Suga rejected it. "It doesn't weigh right. It affects the swing," he argued. He fought a legal battle with the venue security in 3 different countries to be allowed to use a blunted but real metal sword. The insurance premiums for the tour skyrocketed solely because of Min Yoongi's weapon. He was willing to cancel the segment rather than look fake. And then, there was the whiskey rider. Suga's Suchweta persona had bled into the concert. He wanted a drinking talk segment during the encore, sipping real whiskey on stage while talking to the fans. The legal team was screaming about promoting alcohol to minors and broadcasting regulations. Suga didn't care. He argued it was about honesty and adulthood. The compromise? They had to pour iced tea into a whiskey bottle. Suga hated it. Every night, he would make a sarcastic comment about the fake tea that sent the PR team into a panic, fearing he would go off script and expose the corporate censorship. He was difficult because he refused to play the role of the sanitized idol. He wanted to be a raw, unfiltered artist, a man in his 30 seconds sharing a drink with his fans. And the corporate machine found his authenticity impossible to contain. He questioned every marketing strategy, every ticket price. He fought to keep them lower, causing friction with the finance department. And every press release. He wasn't just a member, he was the shadow executive who audited his own company mid-tour. He exhausted Bang Si-hyuk because he forced the CEO to justify every single business decision. He kept the company honest, but he made them work twice as hard to meet his impossible standards of integrity. He was the anchor that was so heavy, he almost sank the ship. But without him, the ship would have drifted away. For his terrifying competence, his reckless disregard for his own pain, and his absolute command over the sound, Min Yoongi takes the number 2 spot. Number 1. The eternal engine, the golden god who broke the clock, the beautiful monster who refused to sleep. Ladies and gentlemen, we have arrived at the summit. The absolute peak of this mountain of madness. We have seen stubbornness, perfectionism, physical recklessness, and artistic rebellion. But nothing, and I mean nothing, could have prepared the HYBE management team for the hurricane that sits at number 1. Bang Si-hyuk, with a look of exhausted affection and PTSD in his eyes, named the member who single-handedly rewrote the labor laws of the tour, the man who terrified the insurance companies, and the artist who simply forgot how to stop. The undisputed king of difficulty for the World Tour 2026 is the Golden Maknae, the ace, Jungkook. Now, wipe that shocked look off your face. You expected him to be the baby, the obedient youngest? That Jungkook is gone. The post-military Jungkook of 2026 returned not just as a man, but as a machine of pure, unadulterated performance energy. Bang PD revealed that managing Jungkook was like trying to put a leash on a thunderstorm. The primary source of the difficulty? His refusal to accept that time physics and human biology are real things. Let's start with the curfew wars that plagued the North American and European legs. Every stadium has a strict curfew. If you go over, the fines are astronomical, thousands of dollars per minute. For Jungkook, a curfew was merely a suggestion. The setlist was designed for 2.5 hours. Jungkook, fueled by his desperate longing for army after his service, regularly turned these into 4-hour marathons. The encore incident at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena is now the stuff of legend. The show was over. The fireworks had gone off. The exit signs were lit. But Jungkook? He wasn't done. He sat on the edge of the stage, towel around his neck, and started taking requests from the crowd. The in-ear monitors were screaming, "Jungkook, we have to cut the power. The union workers need to go home. We are being fined $50,000 every 10 minutes. Did he care? He pulled out his in-ears, looked at the 90,000 screaming fans, and launched into an a cappella medley of Magic Shop, Euphoria, and a cover of a Justin Bieber song he just felt like singing. The stage manager actually cut the microphone power. In a move that made headlines worldwide, Jungkook grabbed a megaphone from a security guard and continued singing through that, leading a stadium-wide sing-along that could be heard 3 miles away. Taehyung had to personally apologize to the city council, writing a check for $500,000 in fines. When he confronted Jungkook later, the maknae just grinned, sweaty and starry-eyed, and said, "But Hyung, they didn't want to leave." He was difficult because his love for the fans bankrupted the logistics budget, but the nightmare didn't end when the stage lights went out. Oh no. The hotel room havoc was the second reason for his #1 spot. Most artists crash after a show. Jungkook? He was just warming up. His infamous late-night Weverse lives became a source of constant terror for the PR and security teams. He would turn on the live stream at 2 a.m. in his hotel room, often cooking full meals with portable burners that were definitely fire hazards, drinking highballs and playing loud music. In London, the fire alarm actually went off in the Dorchester Hotel because Jungkook was trying to grill steak at 3 a.m. with the windows closed while streaming to 10 million people. The security team had to evacuate the floor. Do you understand the level of crisis management required when your star artist almost burns down a historic luxury hotel because he was hungry? Bang PD described waking up every morning in a cold sweat, checking his phone to see what Jungkook had done on stream while the management slept. He was unmanageable because he lived on a different time zone, Jungkook time, where sleep is for the weak and content is king. Furthermore, we must discuss the physical limit paradox. By 2026, Jungkook's physical prowess was terrifying. He was boxing daily, lifting heavy, and his stamina was infinite. This led to him constantly changing the choreography to make it harder. For his solo performance of Standing Next to You, the choreographer suggested a modified, easier dance break to save energy for the group songs. Jungkook was insulted. He demanded to add a sequence involving a 360-degree spin kick and a knee drop that looked painful just to watch. During the rehearsals in Seoul, he did this move 50 times in a row. The physical therapists were begging him to stop, warning him about his meniscus and his hip joints. Jungkook ignored them. "My body knows what to do," he claimed. And then, the terrifying moment in Mexico City. The altitude was high, the oxygen was thin. Mid-performance, during On, Jungkook stumbled. For a split second, the mask slipped, and you saw his eyes roll back. He was hypoxic. The medical team rushed to the side of the stage with oxygen masks. Any other human would have been wheeled off. Jungkook took 2 hits of oxygen, slapped his own face, growled like a cornered tiger, and sprinted back to the center stage to hit the high note of the bridge. Backstage, after the curtain fell, he fainted. He had pushed his body into shock. The difficulty was that you couldn't save him from himself because he wasn't afraid of pain. He was afraid of not giving everything. Bang Si-hyuk confessed that he assigned a special Jungkook watch team whose only job was to force him to drink water and sit down, a task they failed at 90% of the time. And let's not forget the soundcheck perfectionism. Jungkook has absolute pitch and an obsession with audio quality. He would arrive at the venue 4 hours before the other members. He would go to every section of the empty stadium, the nosebleeds, the floor, the side views, and listen to the audio mix. He would radio the sound engineers. The bass is too muddy in section 402, or the delay on the snare is 2 milliseconds too long. He drove the audio team insane. He wasn't being a diva, he was being a technician. He wanted every single fan, even the one in the furthest seat, to hear the perfect sound. This meant the crew never got a break. If Jungkook was awake, everyone was working. He was the #1 most difficult member because he cared with a violence that consumed everything around him. He didn't just want to do a tour, he wanted to create a historical event every single night. He dragged the entire company, kicking and screaming, up to his level. He exhausted the dancers, the directors, the managers, and the CEO, but he never ever exhausted the fans. He was the engine that nearly burned out the chassis of the car, but he was the reason the car won the race. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why the golden maknae, the unstoppable force of nature, Jungkook, sits on the throne of the #1 spot.